So here we are. Oh my goodness, this is just fantastic. I've been waiting for this moment. I've done so many Facebook Lives now, but I've been really looking forward to this one with Dan Boyce. Those of you who are in the life planning community, many of you know Dan. He was just an astonishing life planner in the Evoke process. I was there at his 5-day, and he teamed up with another marvelous life planner named Holly Hunter, who's since retired, and they both went in very different directions. She went all the way down to Mexico, and Dan continued to manage a really fine firm, progressive leadership oriented firm in Michigan. And then I don't know whether he'd call it retiring or not, but he ended up going down to Prescott, Arizona. He's a man who loves hiking, and it's something I've enjoyed very much with Dan, taking at least modest hikes with him. And music is another thing that we've shared a lot. We've talked a lot about choral music and other music. He is a wonderful singer, a sometime choral conductor, but in Prescott, he was chairman of the board of one of the really fine educational institutions in America. And I mean, what a follow on from being a financial advisor and a life planner. And now has retired from that and resettled in numerous places, now really settling on the West Coast in Portland, Oregon. And I'm just so delighted to be reconnected with Dan, who has always thought deeply about progressive issues, about justice, but also about really practical money, money issues and all of the rest. He's raised a good family. Gosh, Dan, I've probably said a few things wrong there. I hope I didn't offend you. Great to have you here.
George. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, wonderful. And unless you've got some major correction you'd like, or a shading of what I shared, I get goosebumps almost thinking about the wonderful things Dan's done in his life. And one of the things that was really wonderful for me was he was an early reader, really, of the Golden Civilization and the Map of Mindfulness book, and a real supporter and a real fan. And so we're likely to focus around that area, but I know with Dan we could range in a variety of areas. Maybe Dan, tell us why you are here and what on this Facebook Live with me.
Well, I really wanted to share with your listeners and viewers what inspires me about the book, The Golden Civilization, and it's truly vision writ large. It's bold scale, it's broad scale, it's audacious, and it really, in some ways, George thinks is thinking outside the box. It's a new paradigm calling for real kindness, generosity of spirit, and most of all, wisdom in our interactions with others. In some ways, it's a clarion call for us to systematically develop the conditions for what you call moments of freedom, and that provides a basis for universal suffrage, and I use that in the broadest sense, on a scale unimaginable until the book came out. So it's a path for nothing less than the self-actualization of society and all peoples through the 7 integrities that you mentioned. So I just thought it was inspiring, and as I say, vision writ large was the phrase. Wow. That kept rummaging around in my mind.
Well, that is such a beautiful tribute. Thank you. Do you know, in all these months, I have not landed a great review of the book, and not a single one. And as you spoke, I thought each one of those things would just be so wonderful to have in a review. And here we've got it on Facebook Live.
Glad to do it. Glad, yeah, glad to be of service.
Fabulous. And Dan, I'm so curious, you named so many things there. And of course, I know so many of them and I believe in so many of them. One of the things I didn't mention was your practice. I believe you were on the board of the Unitarian Universalist Church as well, or one of the boards that they have there.
Yeah.
And so your notion of universal suffrage is something that I know has real deep meaning for you. Something, and I wonder, when you were saying that the book is calling out for that in a way that is in a way beyond what we thought before. What were you meaning by that? What were you intending?
Yeah, that really it is suffrage in this context, thinking of being freedom for each individual in the ultimate way, in a way that is not currently realized in our cultures and societies. So that is, and that universalist tendency, as you say, I've been a Unitarian Universalist my entire life, is kind of embedded in my personal philosophy and being. And so this yearning for that freedom and accountability, and all that goes along with it, is really what I was getting at.
It's stunning to me that we're talking on the day that the results have come out in Hong Kong, where they won 87% of the seats. The pro-democracy movement, and everybody, even the Wall Street Journal would have articles about violence and all of this. And the truth all along has been, this is not about violence versus peaceful protest. This is about democracy versus autocracy, and kind of even in places, a brutal regime and of dictatorship. And so it's wonderful to hear your paean, your call yourself coming out of the book, your enthusiasm for this universal suffrage for freedom.
Yes. Yeah, it is a remarkable moment right now in Hong Kong and in other parts of the world too. There's remarkable things happening.
Yeah, I spoke in Hong Kong. I don't know if you've been following.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I've been on a world tour, and I was in Mumbai and Hong Kong and Tokyo and Singapore. And in Hong Kong, it was so moving because it was during it was in I think late July, early August, and so they were in the midst of their protests. And I interrupted a meeting I was in to go down because the protests were coming by the hotel where I was staying, and I said, I have to go, and I have to meet the people who are doing this. So I went down and spoke with some of them and did some video as I did it. But they're teaching us, because there's always the possibility of autocracy, and what can you do in a city and with modern technology and with with all of that. So very, very exciting. But you've done some amazing things yourself, and your history, not only your understanding of finance and all of that, but you're then moving and spending a decade or so really dived into education in a really pretty phenomenal educational institution, really dedicated to how a particular subset of people learn, and how best, I think it's called the backpacking college of America, but it's just wonderful, a wonderful, inspiring college, Prescott. And I don't know if you'd care to share how, reading the book. So I'm throwing out different thoughts about education. You've
Sure.
done your own work with a significant institution around education. What are your thoughts there? I mean, how helpful is education in all of this, moving to a golden civilization?
Well, a few thoughts, George. Yeah, Prescott College, the experience there was a very rich one for me. And my father was an academic. My brother's an academic. I've had several
Yeah,
in my family, so I've been vaguely or at least tangentially associated with it. But I didn't really understand the world of higher education until I became on the board and ultimately chair. And we'd have weekly conversations with the president, and I would ask, how do things really work here? And he'd tell me, and I'd say, my eyes would get big because it's unlike any other milieu that I've ever been in. But yeah, Prescott College is very experiential in its
yeah,
approach to education,
right,
and
right.
experiential education is kind of a buzzword recently, but they really they were founded on that over 50 years ago, and
Wow.
take it seriously. And I think obviously the experiential nature of learning and how one develops is important in developing ourselves as individuals, and which would eventually help lead to golden civilization. So, in thinking about the education system, a truism that I ran across a long time ago that I have pointed to many times is that information is our data is not information, and information is not knowledge. Knowledge is not judgment, and judgment is not wisdom. And to parse that a little bit more carefully, um, the data, in order to become information, it needs organization into coherent patterns. So that's how it becomes information. And then knowledge is developed by putting those patterns into meaningful and generalizable principles.
Mm.
And to move towards judgment, those principles need discernment and movement into right action.
Mm.
And then to develop wisdom, that brings in multidisciplinary thinking in which actions incorporate moral, ethical, and spiritual dimensions into decision making and actions.
Wow.
So the wisdom that we're looking at or looking for and seeking, and this was actually in my firm in Michigan. We developed a articulate or articulated that wisdom was a major piece of what we wanted to bring to our clients. That data and information and even knowledge and some judgment can all be offloaded, but wisdom is a rare commodity, and if we could truly provide that to our clients, and wisdom in not just financial matters, obviously financial matters, but in leading them to be able to live better lives, that was where we would really distinguish ourselves as a firm.
Wow.
And back to the Prescott College connection, wisdom, as I was thinking about this question about education, wisdom is found at all ages, in all ages, and in all cultures. And one of the programs that I was closely affiliated with, still am, is a program in Kenya that the college has with the Maasai community, indigenous community. And their the Maasai indigenous educational system has a lot to teach us in the West about how about ways or paths that might help lead us to the ideas that you have in the golden civilization. From about age 16 to 26, young men, and they do make things gender specific here, but young men become what are called warriors. And I don't like the term warriors, but that's what they're called. But warriors are not, it's not a militaristic type of warrior. It's becoming a knowledgeable and fierce proponent of community within the Maasai culture. So obviously one thing that they do is, that the warriors do, is learn to defend their community from external and internal threats. So external could be, a lion that's out there in the middle, or whatever. But internal would be divisions between peoples, and how to deal with differences of opinions in constructive ways. And the warrior age is where they direct their attention to focus primarily not on individual achievement, though that's part of it, but more on the importance of community and its central role in their lives. So that's where they learn to become part of the Maasai community. And once they leave the warrior class, then the whole cohort moves into becoming junior elders, and then they become elders later on, maybe in their 40s and 50s. And I know in the advice section of Golden Civilization, you advocate for more mentor-mentee relationships, which call out for more elders. It recognizes wisdom wherever it's found, and elders are also needed in the leadership role and in the leadership section. So there's so much richness that can inform us from being a diverse and pluralistic world.
And the Maasai, I've got so many thoughts, Dan, but just the first one, the Maasai have their education from age 16 to 26 is an experiential education. It's
absolutely. It is not. They're out of school at that time, so they are in literally their own villages as they learn the ways of I'll say of right living within the Maasai community, and develop that culture in a way that supports the sustainability of that culture.
Excuse me. It's really interesting hearing you talk about the Maasai, and we have some people in Kenya who want to develop Golden Civilization conversation. So it's something we might carry forward in some way. Not among the Maasai, but in other parts of Kenya. But when you talk about this age from 16 to 26, I'm reminded of a very different educational system that's also quite experiential, that also shifted the concept of warriors. And that is in Tibet. I don't know if you knew this, but usually a culture takes 20 to 30% of its male population and puts them into warrior-like roles. And this has happened since the end of the Golden Age back, way back. And now that we're in a golden civilization, we're trying to come back to that golden concept. But in Tibet, what they did was they would take roughly 20 to 30% of their young, again, male, and perhaps this was because of the aggression that can come out with our testosterone.
Right, exactly, especially at that time, right?
At that time, and they would take them and they would give them the most extraordinary interior wisdom experiences through profound,
That's what they're
deep,
doing. Yeah.
intense contemplative practice. So intense that, but it's that focused mind. I live in as you know, in the Hana in Maui,
Yeah.
when I'm over there, I live in a bull pasture, and seeing the intensity of the bulls versus the cows that are up the hill that are kind of congregating with each other. The bulls have this narrowness of focus, and if you cross them, you're in trouble.
Mhm.
And but they're clearly, they're goal directed. They're very easygoing if you don't cross their path, but they have this incredible focus, sense of focus. And in Tibet, they would take that warrior-like quality, that sense of focus that would develop into a warrior, and instead they would develop it into a kind of a warrior of the spirit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, marvelous. I love hearing that, George.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wonderful. Wow. And you talked about wisdom and education. Couple things, other things that you'd be interested in knowing in the kind of the strongest of all of the Golden Civilization communities that has developed is a community that's been around now for a year in London, and they have now are in process. We're going to have it up on the website sometime soon. They're putting together a manual of wisdom for ages 6 to 96. And,
Wow.
and
I love it.
yeah, with a strong focus on the institutional wisdom. And I think you should get together with Julian Powell, who's the facilitator. I wouldn't say leader because we become facilitators of participative democracy. He's the facilitator of that group. And talk with him, because you have so much you've thought so deeply about it. I think that he would be fascinated and probably want to interview you. He's going to start doing some of these Facebook Lives on wisdom uh, through our Golden Civilization network as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, when you were talking about the Tibetan
Yeah,
warriors, in that tradition, and I know your Buddhist interest, that Trungpa Rinpoche speaks of the kingdom of Shambhala, in which there's a vision of an enlightened society of bodhisattvas, which extend compassion to all human beings. And the Shambhala bodhisattva is of strong heart mind and basically refuses to give up on anyone or anything. And it occurs to me that kind of spirit informs the vision here. Everybody is,
very much so. In fact, one of my I don't think I'll share her name publicly here, but I was with a Zen master, a woman, a few years ago, and feeling rather shy about being a financial advisor, even though I've taught Buddhist meditation for over 30 years,
sure.
but feeling a bit shy. And I think she was also a little bit shy because she didn't know as much about money as she should in a way, and felt that weakness. But at one point I say, unlike you with what bringing people to enlightenment, I look at, I really listen, and I try to uncover what their next step is.
Yes.
If it's skydiving, if it's fishing, if it's watching television, whatever it is, it could be profoundly spiritual, but whatever it is, I look to find what would inspire the person, tremendous passion and energy to take the next step forward. And she looked at me kind of dumbfounded, and she said, well, that's what I do, and,
Wonderful.
and basically saying what you're doing in life planning is bodhisattva work. We're bringing people to their dream of freedom.
And you articulate that, George, in your section in advice. You say specifically that you want to give the gift of freedom, listening with empathy and inspiration to everyone you meet, or at least to one person a day. Let's make this kind of listening the hallmark of civilization. So it's right there.
Right there. There you go. Beautiful. Beautiful. So the other thing that you would be interested in knowing, we've now done several hundred golden civilization conversations, which are structured just like Evoke, the life planning model that we use. So they have a
Sure.
V for vision, they have an O for obstacles, and then instead of the K and the E, they have actions and commitments. But it's basically, it's an evoke process aimed at evoking civilization. And what I wanted to do was discover not what, I mean, I wrote the book to share my thoughts, but I wanted to hear from the people. I want to hear from everybody. And moreover, my thought was that I hope I can inspire people, but it's really, we want this work to be done grassroots with everybody from all walks
Mhm.
of life. And so so several hundred, I've participated in maybe 70 of them. There are several themes that come out of these that are intriguing. One is that their vision for a golden civilization is coherent, whether you're in Trump territory or you're in a progressive democratic territory, whether you're in Brexit
Mhm.
territory or Remain territory, where you're in the poverty of Mumbai or the democratic yearning and frustration of Hong Kong, wherever you are so far, and we haven't gone everywhere by any means, but so far, wherever we've gone, the vision is the same. It's kindness and collaboration and working together and vitality and inspiration and democracy has played a big role everywhere,
Absolutely.
everywhere. Yeah, even where they
Has to.
don't know it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah, wonderful. So that's one theme. Another theme is in obstacles, fear and greed come up a lot. A lot
Mm.
of other obstacles are there, but fear and greed come up. So there's a real understanding all over the world, even though we feel that our institutional forces aren't fully working for us or aren't working well. There's still an understanding that in here, we've got some work to do. And which is lovely to see all over the world. And then one more thing that I wanted to share with you related to what you've just said, and that is that one of the strongest obstacles and visions, it's in vision and obstacles, is great education.
Mm.
And so it is up there with fear and greed, maybe not quite as strong, but there are many communities where say this is what we want to focus on as a community is on great education. So
Yes.
just to say that's,
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're talking about obstacles, it's implicit in the book that who we are internally manifests itself externally, both individually, which psychologists have long known, but also in our society and culture. And so that is by shifting that internal being, if you will. That's really where our I think we're missing a lot in our educational system. That we're dealing with content and leaving behind some of the character
yeah,
issues.
yeah. So that's a wonderful description that we're emphasizing content and leaving behind some of the character issues. You can see that in the national program of Leave Not a Child Behind, I think, in some ways. But you're talking about just
Mhm.
in general,
Yes,
all over the place. And how
absolutely.
do you understand the shift as being largely one of movement toward experiential? Do you understand it as being external or as internal or as integrating those two in some way? How do you see it, Dan?
Well, I see it as rather systemic, George. It seems to me that the content, I long ago heard that somebody from the early 18th century or 17th century could be transplanted into our current society, and everything would be totally foreign to them except the school system and the way that we're taught. They would, it's the same stuff. And it occurs to me that the content that is being taught, and that we spend so much time on with No Child Left Behind, et cetera, and testing culture, is something that could be done. Teachers don't have to focus on that. You can do that technologically. You can have far better instruction in various modalities, and so the teacher training needs to be focused rather than on content and on pedagogical methodology per se of content, in how do you develop character and those facets of one's personality that will allow them to be productive and have those moments of freedom that you talk about in the book so beautifully. Develop that and develop wisdom in our society in ways that will serve it and humanity much better.
What a difference, Dan, as you're describing that, what a difference it would be if all young adults, young people knew that what was most extraordinary of all in human civilization are those moments of freedom that are experienced with joy and delight and shared with others in a way that strengthen and build community and delight everywhere.
Yeah, and once you've experienced that, you want to experience more, right? So it's this hunger for that, but you have to experience it at least once to know what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's one of the things I noticed as people came through our programs in life planning was that I mean, they still were business people. They had to make a living and all, and that's one of the reasons they were doing it. But their shift completely focused from narrowly focusing on the profit, which is how businesses in general are by fiat almost made to focus, to the focus of virtually every life planner I know became really, I mean, they were so much more excited about having wisdom inside themselves and delivering their clients into that spark of freedom and feeling that spark of freedom in themselves in the sympathetic kind of symbiotic ambiance that happens in a life planning engagement. What an amazing thing when that really happens.
Yeah. Well, it's absolutely true. And to just riff on that one moment, where I've experienced personally some of those most wonderful moments of freedom for me are in the music world. So we share a love of music, and especially a passion for Bach, both of us, I know. And in the media section of your book, you say the purpose of art is to deliver us into our greatest authenticity, paradoxically through artifice, which is, I just caught that as what a wonderful summary of what art is. So it points towards rather than directly at, and it's like when we're looking at the globular cluster, the Pleiades, the seven sisters, and you see it best not when you're looking directly at it, but when you're looking to the side of it. And I also, again, I think you said something like, art inspires us to be better people, to be more of who we are. And that is exactly my experience in the artistic realm.
Well, I'm glad you brought us back to music, because I keep seeing that ancient horn behind you. And music, beautiful. It's a beautiful instrument, beautiful to see, and but even more to hear. And thinking about the artifice that is music. What's astonishing is that it you were talking before, when you were talking about the movement all the way from data to wisdom, you were talking
Yeah.
about various layers of organization, different kinds of organization that would happen as data moved to information, moved to knowledge, moved to judgment, moved to wisdom. And each of them are kind of different kind of systems of organization, really. And what music does is it organizes our experience. I mean, it touches our feelings and it organizes those feelings into something that can't be articulated verbally, but can
Yes.
enter into all of our beings, certainly into our hearts, into our longing, into our urgency of movement. I mean, one of the things that I annoy people with when I'm at a Bach concert is I'm going like this. You know, people behind me, occasionally I get asked to move to the back because I'm bopping with the music. I just can't help but move as you musicians do to the music. But it organizes our passions, our feelings, our understanding into a way that has that delight or has the sorrow, those elements of feeling that lead us often through sorrow into transformation.
Yeah.
Just
It expresses the inexpressible in many ways. Yeah, yeah. That which can't be expressed any other way.
And that organization is artifice. I mean, because
yes,
it's just, but it's what speaks to us. It's so astonishing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And artistry is when one listens to music, that's what one is listening for, is that which can touch us and move us and transform us emotionally and our understanding of ourselves.
Yeah. Wonderful, Dan. Wonderful. Well, great to talk to you. I think we've really done our job of touching all these different fields that we share together. And thank you for your enthusiasm about the Golden Civilization. You've re-inspired me, as you often do.
Been a pleasure, as always.
Wonderful, wonderful. I hope we can take a good walk again sometime soon, even on different coasts somehow. It'd be wonderful to do with you again. Is there anything else you'd like to say in closing, or is this a good place?
Well, this is a good place. I'll just conclude again. I took one other short excerpt from your book saying, if you maximize the opportunity of freedom for people, their dreams and their experiences of freedom, you increase their clarity, stimulate their passionate purposes, and maximize their productivity. And this shows us a path that will make each of us a better person and the earth a better place. What better summary of the book is there than that? That's what we're all looking for.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. That's inspiring as well. Thank you so much.
For your words.
All right. We'll talk soon. Be well. Enjoy the West Coast.
Thank you so much. Pleasure, George.
Thank you. Bye-bye.